Okay, feel free to start, Paul.
You're gonna speak first, Paul. There's too many Pauls here.
Oh, too many.
Yeah,
Sorry.
I'm going to just give a quick introduction because this is related to X Reading. So as all of you know, my name is Paul Goldberg. I'm the founder and creator of X Reading, and my goal is to make extensive reading easier for students to graded readers easier for students to access and easier for teachers to implement extensive reading programs. However, in my promotion of extensive reading and X Reading, I've had many teachers over the years come back to me and say, you know, I like the idea of extensive reading. I know it's important. I know X Reading makes it really easy for my students. Our school doesn't have a sufficient library. X Reading provides that. X Reading helps me track the students. I know it's going to be fantastic, but I just can't implement it because it's not free. And it's not very expensive either, but I have to have my students purchase a textbook, and therefore I can't also have them purchase X Reading. And I heard this repeatedly over the years, and it gave me the idea, well, what about if we could create a textbook that integrates X Reading? Not only would that be more, give better cost performance in a Japanese term there, or be a good value, but it would also help teachers who are not very comfortable, don't know exactly how to implement an extensive reading program, or want to make it part of their class, not just something done separately. So I had this idea. I talked about it with several teachers. Paul Leeming suggested this idea as well. And when I kind of thought, yes, we need to move forward with this, Paul was the natural person to look at as an author, Paul and Justin, his colleague. So Justin, I hope that's a good introduction for you of how you got involved in this and what the motivation was for creating this project.
Yeah, thank you very much, Paul. So yeah, I'm going to be speaking. I'm going to try and keep it to like 30 minutes, hopefully. So there's plenty of time for questions. But I'm going to be speaking. But this isn't just my work. I don't want to take the credit in that. Justin and myself have written the material. Paul has been basically advising us at every stage. We've had regular meetings, and also Rob Waring has also been giving us a lot of feedback and guidance with this. So it's not just the two of us doing this ourselves. So new computer, which is always fun. Why is that not? Okay, I hope that worked. So what I'm going to basically do is talk a little bit about the inspiration for the textbook. Then I'm going to introduce actually the textbook itself. It's called, the presentation title is An Impossible Dream Achieved. We talked about doing this, myself and Paul, for so long. It seemed like it might be kind of almost impossible to actually get a textbook that could bring X Reading and could bring extensive reading into the classroom, but I think we've achieved it. I hope it's not too overly positive a title. So the textbook, again, a kind of working title for the textbook at the moment is Extend. I'm going to present the table of contents, then I'm going to talk about unit structure, activities, and then hopefully have a time for some questions.
Paul,
so what? Yeah, Paul. Yeah.
Someone brought up that I think you're showing the presenter view, not the presentation view.
Yeah, I actually.
You can flip them around at the top.
How do I do that?
One of those should say, I don't know because it's in Japanese. One of those three buttons at the top left should give you the option to flip. Can anybody help him? Can anybody read the Japanese? I can't read the Japanese, but. One of those three.
Okay, how do I get Zoom to not just a set?
You should just be able to flip them. You don't have to actually leave just one of those.
I can't see them because my Zoom is actually the control bar for the Zoom is at the top. Here we go. Okay, slideshow. It should be this slideshow. I said, is that gonna work?
That looks like it.
Yeah, Paul, can you please click on the same one? Yeah, that's Hyoji Sette. And then this is 発表者ツールとスライドショーの切り替え. Okay, you should go for the.
Yep, got it.
Did that work?
Yes.
Okay, cool. Okay, that's good. Sorry about that. Yeah, new computer, which is never a good thing when you're just about to do a presentation. Okay, so where was I now? Okay, so yeah, why an ER textbook? Paul's kind of already spoken about this, but for us in our department where myself and Justin work, the students are required to buy a textbook. The department also have kind of unwritten rules about how much money they want students to spend on a textbook. So I've always been interested in extensive reading. I've actually used it in my class, but to bring X reading in, I talked to Paul and we need a textbook. We need a textbook that will allow me to say to the department, this is the textbook, here it is. You can hold it, you can look at it, and also it comes with extensive, with X reading as part of the package. So that was kind of a very practical issue. Another issue that I found was the struggle of trying to get the reading into the classroom, getting students to talk about the books. And I know I talked to lots of teachers, I've heard of lots of activities, and there are a lot of great ideas about how to bring the books into the classroom. But extensive reading is primarily something students do outside of class. So getting students to bring that in from a motivational benefit. If the student's going to sit and talk with their friends about this book, then hopefully if it's very closely integrated into the course, that will provide motivational benefits. At least that was the rationale. So what have we come up with to move straight to it? An extensive reading textbook. As I said, the working title at the moment is Extend. If anyone has a genius idea for something that's a lot better than that, then please feel free to contact Paul, myself, or Rob with your ideas. But what we're thinking about from this point of view is a 4 skills book. Most of the books that we use, that are commonly used in compulsory English classes in 1st and 2nd year, and even in high school, are books like Touchstone, English First Hand, Smart Choice. These kind of, it's a 4 skills book that's very easy for teachers to use and make really a kind of communicative focus. You could say an oral English class, but they could be used in other classes, but primarily that kind of book. So a general 4 skills book. We're thinking the current plan is to have 3 books. In our department, if we adopt a book, we like to have different levels for our students. So we're thinking of a CEFA A1, A2. That would be kind of your beginner, your TOEIC, 200-300 kids who would be low level. A2 would be kind of, for us at least at my institution, a kind of typical TOEIC 400 to 500, 600-ish. And then a B1, CEFA B1 would be your higher level students, your TOEIC 600 or more, kids who are reasonably comfortable using English. The reason A2 is bolded and underlined is that's the book we've written so far. In terms of the units, we're thinking, again, as a general 4 skills book, our department, we're thinking a book that can be used over the course of a whole year, or if you wanted to have a more intense approach, you could use it potentially in a single semester. But we usually use our books over the course of an academic year. So the constraints, and I say constraints, when we were planning this, we were using the books on X reading. There are a lot of books on X reading, so constraints might be a wrong word. We had a lot to choose from, but we wanted to use books that were on X reading. We talked to Paul quite a lot about this, and we decided that the central book, there would be one central book for each unit, and it would be a fictional book. So the students are reading a fictional story, and the unit would be built around that. This means all the students read the same book, and again, we've talked a lot with Paul about this and how he's had experience doing this with a lot of success. And there's actually research that supports actually student preferences for students all reading the same book. But yeah, there'd be one central book that all the students read, and that would be a fictional story. 3 additional books would be non-fiction. And this would be where students would have a choice. This would be where the choice comes in. But the 3 books would be linked to the unit theme. Hopefully that'll be clearer when I actually get to the actual materials themselves. So kind of repeating myself now already. 10 units, about 3 weeks per unit. Could take longer. Again, if you wanted to rush through more and compress that into a single semester, it would actually be possible. We've been piloting materials, and I found that about 3 weeks is what it took for a single unit. So that would be kind of the benchmark, as it were. So in terms of the what the book is, the approach to the book, it's an integrated ER extensive reading 4 skills course book. Myself and Justin, as Paul mentioned, have a background in task-based language teaching. We founding members of the JALT, Japanese Association of Language Teachers, task-based learning SIG. The books that we've written previously have all had a task-based approach. There's a lot in common, actually, we feel, between task-based language teaching and extensive reading. The focus on meaning, the getting students to enjoy the communicational aspect of things. What we've gone for when we've selected the text is reality-based fiction. What we mean by that is they're fictional stories, but they are set in real world settings. So they're things that hopefully that helps the students relate to. So for example, the study abroad unit has a book about a student who goes to New Zealand, to Auckland, I think. So it's very real. It's exactly where the student is, student can actually go there, and the places that are referenced are actually in the book. Again, the first unit, Friendship Egghead, a lot of you may know that book. It's a real story. It's actually about the author's childhood. So it's a reality based, but it's kind of fictional, and then non-fictional books. And we're also interested in English as a lingua franca. A lot of our students in Asia and around the world are talking to, the majority of people they interact with are not actually necessarily native speakers. And in all the books we've written, in this as well, we're keen to push this model of English users, people who can use English, who don't have to necessarily conform to native speaker norms that we would suggest. We believe that this is a lot more, just as task-based language teaching, we believe it's a lot more motivational for students. They have a model that they can actually aspire to, and hopefully that's something that they can feel more confident in their own English ability. In terms of the table of contents, this is the first half of the book, as it were. So the first unit, Unit 0, the theme is an introduction to extensive reading. The thing I've always found with extensive reading is that the students need, to some extent, to be sold on it. They need to know, why am I doing this? Particularly if you're doing it with high school or university students, read lots of books. It's good for you. But why? What's the evidence for that? How should I read? What should I read? So the idea is, with the first unit, that we have readings about extensive reading. We talk about some of the research that supports extensive reading in a very simple way for students. And then there's a book. The main fictional book here is about a student, and he's starting university, and how he settles into university, And his experience, his part of that is his teacher asking him to do extensive reading and him finding how it benefits him. So it's a positive introduction. So it's like, come on, guys, this is what you can be like this character. You can read and feel the benefits. The other units, I mean, you can see Unit 1, Friendship, the main book there, you've got Egghead. Unit 2, Technology, you've got Breaking Free. That's the first book in that series. I know there's actually a few. And as you can see, there's a follow-up non-fiction. So in Unit 1, the students talk about friendship. They read Egghead, which is a lovely story, actually, of friendship and of school life. And then the follow-up non-fiction books are about how to make friends, how to do small talk, how to communicate. So they're linked very much to the theme. Technology, talking about smartphones, how they're everywhere. And then actually talk about some inventors, people who Galileo, Galilei, etc., who've actually invented things. So each unit follows that kind of approach. There's the main topic. There's the book that's linked to it. In Unit 3, that's very obvious. And then there's some follow-up non-fictional readers about that. This is the second half of the book. So you have, again, science. You've got Ice Station at the End of the World, students talking about science. And one of the issues in that book, for example, is the benefits of drilling for oil in Antarctica. Is science helping us or not? The readings there are jobs related to science, the factual non-fiction books. And then at the end of the year, we have the 10th unit is the unit review unit. It's basically students, again, talking about the books they've read, students analysing looking at how many words they've read and discussions based on that particular topic. There's no specific book for that review unit. So in terms of an actual specific unit, I've got it written down here, but I think it's actually going to be probably easiest to actually just show you guys rather than talking through. But there are basically 3 parts to a unit. We envisage this as being 3 weeks in class. There's the first week where students build up to reading the book. Then they read the book between part 1 and part 2. So they read the main fictional story. Then part 2, they do lots of things with that. Then between week 2 and week 3, they then choose their own factual book. They choose a book and they basically then in week 3, again, activities related to the factual book that they have read. So hopefully when I show you guys a unit, this is hopefully going to be a little bit more clear. So Unit 1, first unit, students have already learned about extensive reading. They know why it's good for them. They've read a couple of books. So each unit starts with an introduction and a speaking activity. It's pretty typical of a lot of 4 skills type books. Who's your closest friend? How long have you known them? How are they similar to you? How are they different from you? I should add actually as well that what I'm showing you now is our what should I call it, draft of this. It's not going to look like this. This is before it goes to professionals. This is, I think Justin did a pretty good job actually, to be honest, but this is a draft. It will hopefully look more like the kind of textbooks that you're used to. So please forgive the crudity of the images and the formatting. But basically you start off with the topic and then you have students talking about it. So it's friendship, talking about your friends. Every unit has this activity. You can see the conversation, who's your best friend? That's a hard question. I have a few close ones, really. Where did you meet them? Most of my friends are from my junior high school. Do you have friends from club? Yes, I do. My best friend is actually from university. What we find, and myself and Justin have taught combined, I guess, about 40 years in Japan, is that students struggle quite often to make conversation. So we've made the first activity a conversation with some support with the idea of getting students to ask follow-up questions. It never, ever gets tiring to remind students to do this. So the first activity, you're talking about friendship, think of some follow-up questions. At the back of the book, we use a lot of resources we put at the back of the book because it gives teachers flexibility. If you don't want to use this, don't. If you are perfectly happy just going through this with the model conversation there, getting students to practice it, remember it, do some kind of drill with it. If you want students to do a bit more, at the back of the book, you can get students to ask follow-up questions. How long have you known your best friend? To make their own conversation. So it's trying to encourage students to actually develop and work on these conversations themselves. They've got the example here, then they go to the back of the book and they try to actually build on and do that. So kids have talked about friendship. Yeah, they're kind of on board with the topic. Then each unit has a split reading. This was the hardest part, actually, probably one of the hardest parts of making this. The reading is about friendship. I'm not going to go into too much detail, but this is talking about two ideas. These are real ideas, and all of our readings are actually like this. I don't like readings that are made up people talking about I do for reading, for extensive reading, but in a textbook, I like the students to actually learn something. So this is talking about two principles about how we make friends. The proximity principle, which basically means how close physically you are to people, and social optionality, means how many different people you can talk to. Basically, what happens is the students read the introduction and then they do a split reading. Student A reads one, student B reads the other, and then they close the textbook and they tell their partner about what they've read. The partner then goes and reads it themselves and gives them a score. This has worked actually really, really well. The students are really good, and it just gives them a lot of motivation again to read. The vocabulary, there's a lot of words in bold: horrible, distance, assembly, bullies, geography, nowhere. These are words from Egghead. We used Rob's vocabulary level, sorry, I should know what the official term for it, but vocabulary level check. And we put all the text file in, and these were words that were in the higher level. We selected a cutoff, and these were the higher level, more difficult words from Egghead. So before students read, they get exposure to that vocabulary. This is their first exposure. There's nothing in here, though, explicitly about that vocabulary, but being task-based learning, we want the students to focus on meaning. Can they do it? Do they know these words? Can they figure them out? But we're also aware that there's weaker students, there's teachers who might want to pre-teach vocabulary, which is why at the back of the book, there is vocabulary support. These are the words from the reading. Why I Write is a famous, so if you look at this, a famous essay. It's one of the words in bold here, a famous essay by the author George Orwell, with a description of what that word actually means. So this reading comes with this support for students. So students have this clear support if and when you think they need it. But it means before they read Egghead, they've all been exposed to this vocabulary. Then the next part is basically some vocabulary related work. Write them in your notebook, any words you didn't know, using that vocabulary. Then we have a mini task. Think about two of your friends, write their name and why you became friends. Was it because you were close? Did you have to talk to them? So this is using the stuff in the reading to basically get students to think about how they became friends with other people. Mini task. final part of your week, your first week, is this pre-reading questions. You're going to read the book Egghead on xreading.com. Before you read, discuss these questions. Have you ever had an imaginary friend? Did you like going to school? What was the name of your first friend at elementary school? What do you think egghead means? So before the students actually read the book, they've talked about friendship, they've built up to the topic, they've actually seen quite a lot of the vocabulary in the book, they've discussed it, they're ready to go. Now your homework, off you go, read Egghead by next week's class. Then week 2, so that's kind of the end of part 1 as we called it. Then week 2 is post-X reading activities. And the first thing is a comprehension check. And this again has worked really well in piloting because the students sit around and they kind of go, oh, what was that? What happened? And it's fairly easy, just some questions about, some are a little bit more detailed. What was the poem about that was read in assembly? It was about a horse. But the students sit there and they go, yeah. So it's getting students to just talk a little bit about the book. Then there's a writing activity, again, about the book. Egghead is based on the author's childhood. Imagine his life when he's 50 years old. I actually don't know how old he is. I did look up the author. What's he doing now? What are his hobbies? And students write about the author. What's his life become? Then they compare their ideas. Then another final kind of follow on from that again is students talking about ideas related to friendship. Do you think imaginary friends are a good thing? What can we do to stop bullying? In Egghead, he actually is bullied a little bit at school, is Michael. And what can we do to stop that? Were there any teachers you really liked? Michael loves his English teacher, the teacher who's really encourages him with English. Part 2, very much focused on what the students have read. Then part 2 has, there's a book review. If you want to, again, at the back of the book, you can see write a review, turn to page in the middle of the screen there. So if you want students to write a review, that could be at the back of the book. If you wanted to encourage that, they could then actually type that up and put that onto X reading. Then we have a listening. This is where the English as a lingua franca is going to come in. We want these listenings to be 2 non-native speakers doing what the students should do, talking about the book. What did you think of the book? Oh, I really like the pictures. They were really cool. The artwork was really interesting. What did Tina say about the author? He must be an interesting guy. So this will be 2 non-native speakers basically doing what you want students to do. So should be a good model for students to use. Again, you can use this whenever you want in a way. It's not necessarily in this flow, but it should be a really good model for students to talk about that. Then there's a communicative task. This is kind of the task-based learning part coming in for us. Every unit has this big, it's the second week, and you want this kind of big communicative task where students hopefully get to talk together. And the topic here, this particular one, is different kinds of friends. There's a split reading again. Students read about the different kinds of friends that we have. Funny friend, motivating friend, unreliable friend, cool friend. And they work together and get those definitions. Then on their own, if you look at the top, it says, think about your friends, fill in the table below. Why did you choose them? Think of a story that says what kind of person they are. Again, I've done this, it's with students, I piloted this, it works well. Then they get into groups and they go, my friend Tomohiro, he's really unreliable. I send him a message on my phone. He doesn't send a reply for like 3 weeks. My cool friend is Kazu. He always wears expensive clothes. The students are talking about, and then they decide who has the best example and report back to the class, finishing with some small writing activity. Choose one of the friends and write a little bit more about them. So the students have talked, it's all based on friendship. It's all really tied in with this Egghead and the story. Then this is the end of week 2. You have pre-reading questions. You've read a story about friendship. You're going to choose a book about how to communicate and make friends more effectively. So again, this is a series. Paul can tell you who the publishers are for this, but it's the 10 Ways To series. And all 3 of these books are related to communication, to making friends. Factual books, they're short. They're about 1,000 to 1,500 words each. And again, before they read, they've got a choice here. So before they read, where are some good places you can go to make friends? Are you good at making conversation in English? Then students choose, okay, what do you want to do? What book do you want to read here? Students choose the book, and okay, that's your homework. Week 2, read that second book. Week 3, again, based on the book. So these books have advice. If any of you have read them, really useful. I've heard a lot of positive feedback from students about these, actually. But they're practical advice. So you read a book about 10 ways to communicate. What were the 3 best pieces of advice? Talk with your partner. Your partner may or may not have read the same book. This is up to the teacher. You may say everyone who's read the same book get together. You may want mixed groups. Could be that everyone chose the same book. Doesn't really matter. They talk about the advice in the book. And then there are part 2, again, is discussion. There are a series of questions about the book. What was the best advice? Was there any that you didn't agree with? So again, the book that they've read is integral in this 3rd week in them discussing this. If you haven't read any of these books, it's not going to be very fun. You can quickly have a look at them and you can try, but it's going to be integral that students actually, they're going to get a lot more out of it. Then finally, again, optional, how presentation in each unit. Topic is friendship. You're going to choose a friend. You're going to do a presentation about the friend. So every unit has a presentation. How you would do this, I tend to like poster carousel presentations. So I would do mini presentation for something like this and then choose one to have a bigger presentation. And then finally, at the end, there's a review. What were 2 things you learned in this unit? And what were 3 words you remember from the readings? So activities basically link the readings to the textbooks. Discussions are related to the books. There's book reviews, tasks that build on materials from the books, and vocabulary and language exercises derived from the books. And I don't know quite how long. I think I have talked for about 30 minutes, which is probably enough. These are our email addresses. If you do want to contact any of us about this. But yeah, that is basically the book. The idea is that, and Paul can give more. The idea is hopefully we'll have this. We've written it. We need to get designers. We need to get it into publication. We're hoping to have it ready, ideally by next spring, to students to be able to use it in the 2023 academic year. Okay, I talked a lot there. I probably missed a few things. Anything, Paul, that particularly springs to mind?
No, I think, yeah, you did a great explanation of the units. I think the thing, maybe the point you and I both missed is this is not an extensive reading textbook. This is a book, this is more of a 4 skills oral communication book that integrates some components of extensive reading. So people who want a pure extensive reading course or a pure extensive reading course book, this is not what you're looking for. This is for teachers who need to teach the regular general, like a general freshman English class, but feel that I want to also have an extensive reading component in it. I think the other thing to mention is, because some teachers I've gotten pushback from some teachers who say, well, this is not really extensive reading because you're telling students which books to read. And my response is, no, we are suggesting some of the books, but ideally they have access to thousands of other graded readers. They should be reading beyond just these 4 books So you're not limited to those in any means. You know, you're getting the full library. These are the books that we're just suggesting. And maybe one more point, as I think you always bring up, and maybe you said this, is that like any textbook, teachers don't have to use every activity. Teachers will use the ones that they are most comfortable with, or the ones they think are most appropriate for their classes.
Yeah, and just to sort of follow up on that, having used this, it worked. It felt really good. It was like I used it actually in an oral English class. It's your typical first years. What's their TOEIC? Decent, 450 maybe TOEIC kids. Not really motivated, to be honest. I shouldn't say that with my Kindai mail address up there, but you know, they're good students, reasonable students. And they actually seemed to really get into it. I was actually kind of surprised, they all read the book, actually, which was great. And it really brought the book into the classroom. But having said that, it didn't mean that it felt like a normal class. It wasn't like we are doing extensive reading, we are doing extensive reading. It was a normal class. We did a reading. We talked about the reading, we did a mini task, we did some vocabulary activities, we did an oral communication task, we did a presentation. It was a normal class, but it brought in the extensive reading, and students will read, if students do this for a semester, if they use 5 units of the book, so the intro and the first 4 units, they would read probably in the region of 30 to 40,000 words all told on X reading. Well, that's not enough. That's not really extensive reading. So as Paul says, the main thing is for them it gets them into it, it gets them doing it. And it means the students who really don't read that much will at least have read that much. But it means that hopefully the teacher then can get the students, obviously, I set targets of 100,000 words for my students. They didn't all make it, but this book would not get them there. So it's, yeah, just a part of the deal, as it were. But yeah, thank you, Paul. And thank you, Rob, as well, I should mention again, for the feedback and input that he's had with this. Any questions